And we're continuing our discussion with the candidates running to be the next MLA for Vermilion, Lloydminster, Wainwright. And we have Danny Hozak here. He's from the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition. Thanks for taking some time to talk with us, Danny.
Thanks for taking time to visit with me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's exciting. So first of all, we'll get, I think a lot of people that are politically inclined in this area may know a little bit about you. But if they don't, let's give people a chance to learn a little more about Danny.
Well, I've lived and farmed with my wife and family in the Streamstown area, all of my life up until now. And I was the Wildrose candidate in 2012 and 2015. I was a good supporter of the UCP, and then we look at some of the things that, in all honesty, we'll get to this, I guess, in a few minutes. Jason Kenney came in promising to do something about equalization and promising to bring in effective recall, and he hasn't. And we think we need to hold him to account for not keeping his promises. And so we thought, well, we'll get our old Wildrose party going, and we will hold them to account.
So yeah, talk to me a little bit about, first of all, why now are you running to be MLA for this area, and why the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition? Just talk to me a little bit more about that organization.
Well, the Wildrose Loyalty Coalition, we're basically a grassroots organization. And I mean, the main plank in our platform is going to be, if you can't fire them, don't hire them. And I mean, Jason Kenney knew that, and he got elected last time on two things: dealing with, talking tough with standing up to Ottawa on equalization and bringing in recall. But the recall that he brought in isn't effective recall. And one of the things that I've done between 12 and now is we started a group called the Economic Education Association, and we talk about the essentials of freedom and the things you have to do to defend and maintain freedom. And we've been saying it's a lot easier to stay out of trouble than it is to get out of trouble. And one of our more sought after speakers, his name is Andrew Lawton, he said if you study it, like, we are increasingly being governed by people who have spent more time thinking about how to get elected than thinking about how to govern. And Jason Kenney did a good job of getting elected, talking about standing up to Ottawa and bringing in effective recall. But when you look at it, all he did was he sent some mean letters to Ottawa, and the recall that he brought in wasn't functional. So he basically, I would say, he didn't live up to his promises. And so we want to hold him to account for not living up to their promises. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah. So let me ask you about this, because I think there was a lot of people inside of the UCP that weren't happy with Jason Kenney and his leadership. He narrowly wins that leadership vote, resigns. Now we have Danielle Smith as Premier. Do you have issues with some things that she's done in her short time as Premier also that is leading you to not want to support the UCP? Well,
yes. Two things. One, I mean, she's there. I mean, and she's been the premier for 6 or 7 months.
Yeah.
And we all know that. And now they're coming out with this: oh, be sure you don't split the vote. Which is a strategy to get elected. It's not a strategy to govern well. And if we end up with a split vote, there'll be one person and one party that need to be held to, will be responsible for that. And it's Danielle Smith and the UCP party, because they've had 6 months, like they all know, they've sat there, and my good friend Garth has sat there for 4 years, and they had recall, but it's not a functional recall. In Lloydminster, our recall, our recall plan is 50% plus one of the people who vote can sign a petition and force you to step down and run in a by-election. So in Lloydminster, mostly 12,000 people vote, so 6,000 plus one could force you to step down and defend yourself in a by-election. The UCP's recall would take about 16,000 signatures, which is, you might be able to get 6,000 people if enough people were mad, but getting 16,000, like, it's not possible. You know what I mean? And so it's not functional recall. So now all of a sudden they're worried about a split vote. If they'd have brought in like functional recall, we wouldn't have had to worry about that, and we wouldn't have been sort of holding our fingers, crossing our fingers, praying that we don't get into some, aberration where we end up with the NDP again.
So it really seems like you want to bring forward a lot of grassroots policies that people in this riding. This is a conservative stronghold. So is that something that's appealing? You think will be appealing to voters, because it's a conservative stronghold, and it seems like we have quite a few different candidates on the ballot that are more conservative in nature. But do you feel like you're that kind of grassroots option?
Well, we are, and I also think our leader, Paul Himon, his grandfather was the provincial treasurer under, William Aberhart. Like, he has spent his life thinking about how to govern. And this comes back to our Andrew Lawton quote about saying, we're being governed by people who've all they've ever studied is how to get elected. And Jason Kenney turned out was really good at getting elected. But then when it came time to govern, he was almost hopeless, I guess it's fair to say, you know what I mean? And he's gone. And so, like, to me, our party, I think we've spent an awful lot of time thinking about how to govern. And I mean, Paul has done a tremendous lot of work on that. And one of the things, he just thinks about it constantly. And one of the things that I want to talk about, and he brought it up in 2005. When he got elected in 2004, he went to the legislature, he went to the finance department, he said, I'd like to know how many dollars in taxes are paid in each constituency. So they printed them off. And the numbers are absolutely staggering how much money comes out of some of these communities. And when you look at it, like Lloydminster, our constituency, we are to Edmonton as Alberta is to Ottawa. We all look at Ottawa and we say we send them way more money than is our share, and then we have to beg to get some of it back. Well, provincially we're the same way. Our constituency sends way more money to Edmonton, and then we have to beg to get a little bit back to fix the hospital or update an old folks home or fix the roads. And so anyway, we've got all those numbers. They should be available to all of us. But a couple of years later, Paul went back and said, I'd like to get the updated list. They said, oh, we don't give that information out anymore. And the reason they don't give that information out anymore is because we would be offended here if we knew how much we sent up and how little a percentage of that we got back.
All right, Danny. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us. I know just a short little interview here, but it's great to be able to find out a little bit more about what you want to do if you're elected as MLA.
I think I've outlined some of the things that we'd like to touch on, which I don't think anyone else is talking about. So again, our leader is Paul Himon, and I appreciate you taking time to visit with me. And don't forget to vote.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.